The Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below.
Or concern you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't had anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected. Because no one has been able to see the whole picture. Until now.
Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. Good to have you with me. If you haven't joined the show before, my name is Grant Lavac, and if you've found this channel intentionally, then like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what's not. So we've got some friends joining us today, so just wanted to do a quick shout out to some familiar faces in the chat. Jimmy, always good to see you, my friend. Looking forward to seeing what Grant has found. We will certainly reveal some information in today's session. Great to see you as well. Zane, interested in Grant's opinion as he has done research work with FOIA and archive records. I'd be interested in his take on Ross's latest News Nation interview about the MJ12 docs. Yes, that was a incredibly interesting and intriguing episode. So I'll certainly be weighing in my thoughts on that in today's session. Jimmy's comments on that, good Zane, that chap on Ross's latest News Nation is legit. His statements make a lot of sense to me. So we'll certainly be, I'll give you my thoughts as we go through in today's session. Jasmine, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining. We've got a few others. UAP AARO, good to see you, Colin. Thank you for being here, my friend. Short Cook Order 1, welcome. Thanks for joining. And Mr. T, be good to your mama, is here as well. So wherever you're joining, folks from around the world, thank you for taking some time out of your day, your Friday in Australia, or your Thursday if you're across the pond in the US. And it's great to be with you. So today's episode, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about a fairly controversial figure in the UFO community, Dr. Stephen Greer. And irrespective of what your thoughts are on Dr. Greer, I have my own personal thoughts and opinion. We're going to be doing what we can to try and validate or invalidate claims that Dr. Greer has made as it pertains to his engagement with defense officials in Australia. So this episode is titled, Did Dr. Stephen Greer Brief an Australian Minister for Defence? So we're going to get into it. I'm going to show you all of the information that I've found in my research while I was putting this presentation together. And we're obviously going to do a bit of recap of some of the things that have been happening close to home as well. So let's dive in, shall we? Before we do, just a couple of reminders. If you like the show and you'd like to see it grow, please consider giving it the standard like, share, subscribe. It certainly goes a long way. If you want to go above and beyond, just like, share, subscribe. There are some YouTube membership options and Patreon membership as well. So just shout out to my regulars, Patreon members, Jimmy. We have Jasmine. We also have Clint Feidler, and there's a couple others on YouTube as well. So thank you for your ongoing support, folks. If you do want to see the show grow for a couple of dollars a month, gold coins, you can support the show. But that's enough of a plug. There was, I believe, I did set up a poll for today's show, so I'm not too sure if it's still showing in the chat. If it is, feel free to respond to the poll. If it's not there, just put your comments in the chat as we go through today. Do you believe Dr. Stephen Greer briefed an Australian Minister for Defence? So feel free to opine, weigh in. If the poll is displaying for you, feel free to cast your vote, and we'll see if we can pull up the results towards the back end of this episode. We also have, let's see, memorable moments. Great to see you. Thank you for joining from Melbourne. You're close to where I am, and Short Cook Order 1 is in the Blue Mountains, so hopefully you've got a bit more better weather than we do down here in Melbourne today. So in this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, we're going to attempt to reverse engineer, pun intended, Dr. Stephen Greer's claims and determine if there is any validity to those claims. So where do we start? So last year, I believe it was, on the 21st of February of 2023, Dr. Greer appeared on the Shawn Ryan show, and I'm going to play a clip for you so you have some context for what we're going to be talking about today. So let me put my fair use banner up. We are educating the public and critiquing the content being shared. So this is the first clip from the Shawn Ryan show featuring Dr. Stephen Greer that was aired on the 21st of February, 2023.
What's interesting is that the Pentagon has officially said those objects that have been released of the Tic Tac and other UFOs that have been documented.
So there you have it. There's our first claims. Dr. Stephen Greer, made a statement that he had briefed all of the Five Eyes, the ministers for defence or the equivalent, with the exception, I think he said, of New Zealand, and he's either met current or former ministers' defence. So when I first saw Dr. Greer say that back on the 21st of February of last year, that pricked my eyebrows up and my ears up, because I thought, oh, well, there is something that potentially I can try and chase down through FOIA. So, and where I started was, I thought, well, let's first have a look at who are the most recent Australian ministers for defence for, let's say, the last decade, as an example. So let me pull up this on screen here for you so you can see where I pulled this information. And all of the information I'm reviewing today is open source. So let's just see where this is here. Give me 1 second, folks. I think this is the one. There we go. So this is just Wikipedia. There's just some generic information about the Minister for Defence for Australia, what the role is, what it encompasses, and so on. But nicely, in this Wikipedia page, there is also a list of all of the ministers for defence, which makes my life a lot easier when I'm trying to track down some information. So if we scroll on down, let's have a look at everything from to date. So Richard Marles is the current Australian Minister of Defence, and we go back through the years, when he was first appointed. Peter Dutton, Linda Reynolds, Christopher Pyne, Maurice Payne, Kevin Andrews, David Johnson, Stephen Smith, and that goes back to 2010. So there's a good 14, 15 years or so of the last several, almost, a bit over half dozen ministers for defence. So I leveraged that information to try and submit some Freedom of Information Act requests. And so the first request that I submitted, if I pull up this first document, so I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request in Australia back on the 27th of February of last year. So this was less than a week after Dr. Stephen Greer made those claims on the Shawn Ryan show. And I basically submitted a request that was directed to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence's office through FOIA. And I asked for documentary evidence, including email communications and ministerial correspondence, of correspondence between the Minister of Defence and Dr. Stephen Greer and or Serious Technology Advanced Research, which is the name of his organization. Serious disclosure for the period 21 May 2022 to 27 February 2023. And there was no documents located that were matching the scope of that request. So it made sense to me that if Dr. Stephen Greer had attempted to engage a Minister for Defence, the first point of call would probably be that he or his organization would reach out in writing, letter or email, try and gauge appetite for scheduling a meeting, having a discussion, so on. So I couldn't find, there was no record of any documentation pertaining to correspondence sent from or on behalf of Richard Marles to Dr. Stephen Greer and his organization. So I thought, well, okay, let's go a little bit further back. Let's not just look at the current Minister of Defence. Let's have a look at a few more. So I sent, this was on the 30th of March of 2023, a couple of days after I submitted that first FOIA. I went after copies of email communications and ministerial correspondence between the following former Ministers for Defence and Dr. Stephen Greer, Serious Technology Advanced Research, Serious Disclosure for the following periods. So I went for the Honourable Peter Dutton, who was the Minister of Defence prior to current Richard Marles for that date range, Linda Reynolds, and then we went back. So it was just those two. So really going back to 2019. Email communications and ministerial correspondence should also include those sent on behalf of the aforementioned Ministers for Defence and any defence personnel that were cross-copied in on the communications correspondence. No cigar. No documents were identified as matching the scope of the request. And all of these FOIA requests, it actually shows me what search terms, what keywords they used in their searches. So, Stephen Greer was obviously included, Serious Disclosure, Serious Technologies. So just, them confirming to me that they had tried to do their due diligence and take all reasonable steps to try and find any responsive records. So no cigar on that front. So I thought, all right, well, let's try and go back even a little bit further. So I went to, this was on the 27th of May of last year. I submitted another request, now going for copies of email correspondence, kind of the same that you saw before, for now for Stephen Smith, who was the Minister for Defence 14 of September 2010 to 18 September 2023 inclusive. And immediately after him was David Johnston, and immediately after David Johnston was Kevin Andrews. So going back, looking at all of the Ministers' Defence dating back to 2010, a good 14, 15 years. And again, as you would expect, no documents were identified as matching the description of the request. And they did their due diligence in obviously including Stephen Greer Serious in their search when they conducted their search. So after that point, I kind of abandoned my my efforts to try and find some more information. But again, Stephen Greer didn't just stop there. He then appeared on another podcast. He did another interview with, this was on the 26th of May of last year. And I'll pull this up on screen. He did an interview with Chris Lehto from the Lehto files. And he really reiterated, Dr. Stephen Greer reiterated his claim that he had briefed Ministers for Defence. So let me show you this clip, which will help inform the next stage of my digging of information.
1957 to 60, President Dwight Eisenhower found out that there was a group that was going off of authorized supervision by the president and also by the Congress, and began to engage in unacknowledged special access projects and black projects, but they were so deep black that neither he nor the Congress were being informed about many of their activities. And of course, it fell on deaf ears, and they were not explicit that it was dealing not solely, but largely with this UFO issue. Because from 1945 until the late 50s, we had acquired extraterrestrial vehicles and were reverse engineering them. and the corporate contractors and the government involvement began to operate without proper oversight because they did not want the information to leak out even from the White House and congressional offices. And while the secrecy could be explained in some regards, the management of it became increasingly illegal and unconstitutional, to such a point now that, from the 1993-92 period when I got involved at this level, we found that the president and senior members of the Congress who were to be informed of these sort of operations were being not only not informed, but actively denied access and, I might add, threatened. So this becomes a very big problem if you're in a alleged constitutional democratic republic such as the United States or a democracy like most of Europe. And by the way, this pattern of behavior exists also in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and other countries. I mean, when I briefed and met with the Minister of Defense of Great Britain, he had the same story to tell, that even though he was head of the MOD and with that MI5 and MI6, he was not given information on this subject. Same thing with the Minister of Defense of Canada and the Minister of Defense of Australia, with whom I met about 10 years ago. So I think that this is a serious systemic problem of illegally run projects.
So there you go. So there we have, again, Dr. Stephen Greer making claims that he had briefed the Minister for Defense for MOD in the UK, Canada, as well as making the suggestion there that he had briefed and met the Australian Minister for Defense around a decade ago. Now, why is that important? Because that's some actionable intelligence. This interview was on the 26th of May of 2023. If you go back 10 years from that, that brings us to 2013. And so who do we know, based on that list that I showed you, that was the Australian Minister of Defense in 2013? It was Stephen Smith, and then he ended his tenure on the 18th of September of that year, and David Johnston then took over. So you have an overlap. There are two Australian Ministers for Defense in 2013. So that, again, was information that piqued my interest and got me thinking, all right, well, there's potentially some actual intelligence there that we can try and utilize to find some information. Now, Dr. Stephen Greer didn't rest there. What are we in August? Only 2 months ago, on the 25th of June, Dr. Stephen Greer again reiterated his claims that he had briefed ministers for defense on a podcast called the PBD podcast. And here is that clip for context.
What I've been saying to members of Congress in the last few years since they've started looking into this, I said, you guys are here rearranging the chairs on the Titanic as it goes down. You really need to understand and learn quickly that, you can make a request through the chain of command and you're going to be told nothing like Woolsey, nothing like General Hughes, DIE director, nothing like Admiral Wilson, and all the dozens of other people like that. And by the way, this pattern you can replicate in the United Kingdom, Australia, because I have had meetings with the Minister of Defense directors for Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. None of them were given access. And they all have told me, this never came, they never were told. And then subsequently, they would have learned that, there were operations right under their nose that were deep black, illegal operations. So this pattern is a dangerous pattern in terms of governance, but also for world security, national security, and the future of the planet and humanity. There's nothing good that comes from that kind of corruption. And so at some point, some people with real courage are going to have to step up to the plate. Or, frankly, we're going to hell in a handbasket very quickly on this planet. Excuse my language. But it's just we're not in a place where we can keep kicking this ball down the road. But that is typically what politicians want to do. They just want to kick the ball down the road.
So there you go. So there's some context again. So in all three of those interviews that he's done, he's stood by his claim that he has briefed ministers for defense across most of the Five Eyes. And again, I found that very interesting whenever I hear the word Australia and the UAP UFO topic, it gets me interested. So what do we do with this information? So I've tried my best to try and reverse engineer those claims and see if I can track down some information that can either support Dr. Greer's claims or refute it. Now, again, irrespective of my personal opinions of Dr. Stephen Greer, any researcher, good researcher, should try and stay neutral and do their due diligence and dig and find information that either supports a claim that's been made or refutes it. So I'm going to now reveal to you some of the information that I've been able to track down thus far. A few other folks have joined us, so I just want to do a quick shout out and say hello to my good friend Akashi Chris from Mindfork. Great to see you, my friend. Thank you for staying up late on your side of the on your side of the world. We also have Chris Mack joining us. Thank you for joining, Chris. Your guy Ross Coulthart starting to sound more and more like Greer with every podcast or lecture he gives. I don't agree with your assessment on that one, but I certainly respect your opinion. Clint Feidler, great to see you, my friend. Hey, man, I'll try and watch as much as I can. Thanks for joining. Feel free to catch up and watch on demand if you need to. A few comments that came through. We have, and Scott Fisher, good to see you too, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us for this episode. Short order cook one. I think Greer may have met with someone, but who, and are they still in office? It's a good question. UAP Altura, why leave out New Zealand MOD? It's a good question. Maybe because they don't have as strong as a history investigating the UAP UFO topic as Canada, the UK, and New Zealand and Australia. Not too sure. That's just my guess on that front. Short order cook, there's a couple names on that list of ministers' defense that we recognize. Kim Beazley was one for many, many years. And thank you, Jimmy, for your kind support. Love the dedication. So Zane's comments, Grant, as additional FOIA avenue, are you able to FOIA border control for people coming into the country and existing, with the claim being that he met them? Is it digital or physical? Great question, and I've already done that. So I've submitted a FOIA request to the Department of Home Affairs. You can request for international travel movements. However, I suspect I'm going to get a refusal request because I don't have the consent of Dr. Stephen Greer to track down those records. So I have nonetheless tried, and I'll be able to report back on whether or not I'm successful on that front. So there are those three videos, friends, for context. So where do we go to from there? So I took some of that information and I tried to use it to, like any good researcher, try and put that information into work. And so I tried to track down some documentation. But before I did that, I thought, well, why not just go? If I pull up this email for you, where is it here? Make sure I've got it on screen. I want to make sure I'm pulling up the right one. Give me 1 second there, folks. Is this the one? Let's have a look. Okay, it's not that one, so I'll just show you the other one. So I thought I'd go straight to the horse's mouth and send an email to Dr. Stephen Greer directly. And I think this is the email. There we go. So I had reached out to Dr. Stephen Greer's media team, and that email address is public domain, so it's not revealing any privacy information there. This was only recently, and obviously preparing for this episode today. So, hi, Dr. Stephen Greer media team. I'm an Australian-based researcher and currently investigating the Australian Department of Defence's public engagement on the UAP UFO issue. In a podcast interview with retired US Air Force pilot Chris Lehto that premiered back in May 2023, and I included the link and the time code below, Dr. Stephen Greer confirmed that he had met with the Australian Minister for Defence approximately 10 years earlier. At your convenience, could you kindly confirm if the Australian Minister for Defence, if if the Australian Minister of Defence that Dr. Greer is referencing in the clip above is Stephen Smith, who served as Australian Minister of Defence from 14 September 2010 to 18 September 2023. If so, could you kindly provide details on the nature of Dr. Greer's engagement with Stephen Smith, MP, Member for Parliament? If Stephen Smith is not the Australian Minister of Defence that Dr. Greer is referencing in the clip above, could you kindly confirm the name of the Australian Minister of Defence that Dr. Greer met with? Many thanks. Look forward to your response. Sent 2 follow-up emails, no response. As I expected, they don't want to respond to me. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to entertain any questions about Dr. Greer's claims. So I didn't have any luck there, unfortunately. So I thought, all right, well, why not send an email to Stephen Smith, who, for your interest, is the current. Let me just have it pull this up so you can see it here. Where is it? So Stephen Smith is the current head of mission. So the head of the Australian High Commission in the United Kingdom. So the equivalent of the Australian ambassador, basically. So he is now in that position. He is representing Australia and Australia's interests as the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. So I thought, well, we know that Stephen Smith was the Minister of Defence for the bulk of 2013, which if we go back 10 years from when Dr. Greer said, he had met with the Australian Minister of Defence about 10 years ago. So if we take that to be 2013, I thought, well, why not see if I can get any comments from Stephen Smith directly. So again, this is not private information. Stephen Smith's email address is public domain. You can find it on the Australian Parliament House's website. Greetings, the Honourable Stephen Francis Smith. I hope this email finds you well. I'm a private researcher citizen based in Melbourne, Australia, and currently investigating claims made by Dr. Stephen M. Greer, and I provided a link to his Wikipedia page. Click link for biography in May 2023 that he had met with the Australian Minister of Defence circa 2013. Refer clip below, and it's got a time code. In your official capacity as Australian Minister of Defence from 14 September 2010 to 18 September 2013, did you ever meet with Dr. Stephen Greer? If so, could you kindly confirm the nature of engagement with Dr. Stephen Greer? Many thanks. Look forward to your response. Do you think I got a response? No luck. Sent 2 follow-up emails. No cigar. So at least I tried to do my due diligence and follow up on those potential threads. So unfortunately, no cigar on that front. Mr. T, our gov would be tight-lipped as the US as they need to be with places like Pine Gap. They need us. Certainly Pine Gap is a very interesting place, and that comes up in this investigation, which we'll go through. We'll bring that up later today. Pine Gap definitely springs to mind when discussing UAP. Raf, welcome. Thanks for joining on X. Good to see you. I appreciate you joining. And who else? We have Wixie. Great to see you. Excellent work, Grant. Our Australian government is hiding a lot of evidence about UFO, UAP genre. We just have to keep asking questions, and one day we might get answers. Very true, because as we've seen time and time again, the Australian Department of Defence is being very cagey on its engagement, or rather lack thereof, on the UAP topic to date. And we know this based on the back and forth. They initially denied even attending AARO's Five Eyes inaugural UAP caucus working group meeting in May 2023. And then several months later, they did a full 180 and they admitted it. So thank you, Short Order Cook One. I certainly tried to get a response from Dr. Greer and the current High Commissioner, previous former Australian Minister of Defence, Stephen Smith, but no luck on that front. So let's now use that as an opportunity to jump into the research that I've tried to do, the information I've tried to find to kind of reverse engineer Dr. Stephen Greer's claims. So let me pull into view for you. I'm just going to show, I've got a couple of slides that I've prepared for this to make it a little easier as we go through. So let's pull this up. Here we go. All right. So the first question I asked is, well, where is Dr. Stephen Greer most likely to meet with an Australian Minister for Defence? Would it be abroad when the minister is travelling, or is it at home in Australia? How do we know that Dr. Stephen Greer has even been to Australia? Well, he told us on the 11th of September of 2013, and that's Australia date and time, so that he would have posted this the day prior in the US, I imagine on the 10th. He tweeted, back from 6 weeks of travel to Vegas, London, LA, Joshua Tree, and Australia. Big thank you to all those who made these events the best ever. Now, why would Dr. Stephen Greer be in Australia? That was my first question. And it turns out that he was here. Well, he was actually, why was he traveling? For starters, he was traveling because he was going on the premiere circuit of his first documentary, Sirius. And he was scheduled to appear at the premiere of Sirius in Las Vegas on the 20th of July. And that's a tweet that supports that. After Vegas, where did he go? And Sirius, again, I think you can get it. It's readily available. I'm not sure if you can watch it for free on YouTube. It's certainly available on Dr. Greer's website, which is linked in the show notes below. But it is his first documentary. It was done over a decade ago. If you haven't seen it and you're interested to watch it, have a look at it. So that was the premiere of his first documentary, Sirius. So then he tweeted on the 13th of July that he was attending London in BAFTA Theatre for the premiere of Sirius on July the 25th, with more information coming soon. Now, these tweets are so old, over 10 years, that some of the images in the post are not appearing because the website's now, the web page is gone. So after the premiere of Sirius in London, where was he off to? He was off to LA for the premiere of Sirius at the Awareness Film Festival, which is held in Santa Monica on the 28th of July. After the LA premiere, he was off to Contact in the Desert, which just this year celebrated its 10th anniversary. So here we have him promoting his upcoming appearance at Contact in the Desert at Joshua Tree, which I believe is in California, could be wrong there, on the 11th of August. And he promoted that again in the lead up to his appearance at Contact in the Desert, indicating that he was going to do a one-night CE5 training and workshop that people could register for. And again, we can even pull up on the Wayback Machine, Contact in the Desert's website from 2013, which clearly shows that Dr. Greer was appearing, doing a lecture and doing a CE5 training event at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. And that was Contact in the Desert was scheduled between 9 to 11 August 2023. So then we have some follow-up information from Dr. Stephen Greer telling us that he's coming to Australia in August of 2013. Did I say 2023? I meant 2013. Coming to Australia in 2013. And he was soliciting feedback from folks that follow him, saying, anyone know of an ideal facility Eastern Australia for a contact expedition? Sounds like he wanted to do a CE5 training event or CE5 event for a private event, and presumably charge for it. Follow-up tweets. I hope to meet many of you in Australia in August. To find out where we'll be meeting, sign up for our mailing list at, and obviously a link. He continued in the lead up to his August appearance. Dr. Greer is planning on being in Australia in August. Sign up for our mailing list to get the details. So again, someone either, I suspect it's not always Dr. Stephen Greer that has historically posted to his Twitter account. He obviously has a social media team that does it for him. So we then have another one. So he's really pushing and plugging the Australia visit hard. Coming soon, Series Premiere Australia and workshop with Dr. Stephen Greer. Sign up at seriousdisclosure.com with details coming shortly. And then a Facebook post on the 16th of August, saying, last chance, get your tickets to the August 16th Australian premiere of Sirius, followed by a lecture by Dr. Greer. So there we have some intel telling us that Dr. Stephen Greer is in Australia on the 16th of August 2013 for the premiere of Sirius. So that's interesting. So he's obviously, claims that he has met with the Australian Minister of Defence. Is it more likely that that would take place in Australia or abroad? I would personally think Australia, and it looks like he well and truly has made the trip to Australia. Now, this is the only references in all of Dr. Stephen Greer's Twitter feed and Facebook. The posts that I've shown you, bar one or two that I haven't showed today, are the only references that I've been able to find relating to Australia. So for me to speculate, I would then say that, well, maybe Dr. Stephen Greer has not made any other trips to Australia other than this one in 2013. So that was interesting. 16th of August. Again, we've got some intelligence that we can follow up on and try and dig into finding, well, where did this Sirius premiere take place on the 16th of August 2013? Great researcher and my good pal on X or Twitter at TPLoft2008 was able to find some information, all open source using Wayback Machine. And I've redacted some of the information that's in this. This was a blog post. I'm not revealing the information pertaining to the individual that posted this, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But this was the information that TPLoft2008 was able to find. A blog post by someone saying, Dr. Stephen M. Greer visiting Australia in August 2013. Dr. Stephen Greer announced at the 2013 Nexus conference on 23rd June, and I haven't been able to find any information about that conference, that he will be visiting Australia at the end of August. And this is obviously in the lead up prior to Dr. Stephen Greer, I suspect, even posting on X about his upcoming visit. He has been invited to speak at a private meeting of government and other officials. That I found incredibly interesting. Dr. Greer may be doing a lecture or two, or a lecture or 1 or 2 day workshops. More information is yet to come. I know as much as you do at this stage, so please stay tuned. We via here or our Facebook page. If you're interested in the August visit or anything to do with Redacted, please join our mailing list, go to our homepage and fill in, etc. So we then have some information. We know that Dr. Stephen Greer is claimed to have met the Australian Minister of Defence about a decade ago. So we take that as being 2013. We know that he was in Australia in 2013. And we know, based on the information that has been posted by this individual, whom I'm assuming, well, more than assuming, I know has been close to Dr. Stephen Greer. So I don't have any reason to believe that this information is that this individual has posted is inaccurate. That Dr. Stephen Greer has indicated that he's been invited to speak at a private meeting of government and other officials. So that kept me trying to dig even further. So what do we do from there? I searched high and low to try and find the author of this post on a blog. And after much digging and much unsolicited outreach, I was able to track down the author of this post and start some correspondence with that individual. Now, that individual has requested that their information remain private, so I certainly respect their request for anonymity, and that's why I've redacted information on this image that would reveal their information. So I had some text correspondence, some SMS correspondence with this individual. And excuse me, folks, I'm blind as a badger, so I'm going to have to put the old glasses on. So I reached out to this individual, and I obviously apologized for the unsolicited outreach and explained who I was and what I was attempting to do. And I was able to develop some back and forth correspondence with this individual. And so this individual disclosed to me in a text message, and this is verbatim, when he, being Greer, was here in 2013, He briefly dropped names of heads of departments and said he was meeting them at some yearly gathering. I questioned him how true this was. I couldn't get proof it were a real thing. So again, we've got some supporting information to go off regarding this, potential. Now, was Greer feeding bullshit to this individual that was close to Greer? I have no idea. It's possible. I can't speak to the veracity of this information that's been relayed, but this information was relayed to me. So I found that incredibly interesting. And this individual that I connected with was able to share some information that's no longer available on a Facebook page, but confirm some information about when and where these events, this premiere of Sirius and these workshops were taking place. And as Dr. Stephen Greer indicated in his Facebook post, yes, it was taking place on the 16th of August, 2013, at Bond University, which is in Queensland. And that was on Friday the 16th. And then on the Saturday and the Sunday, being the 17th and 18th of August, he was conducting a 2-day intensive training workshop. So again, more information that I could use to try and dig further and follow up. So I did some digging and I was able to corroborate that information with other independent parties on Facebook that had also posted information about the Sirius premiere. This is all public domain, so I'm not revealing anything that is obviously private information. Once it's on public domain, Facebook, X, Instagram, it's public knowledge. So this lady by the name of Sharon Ann Rowland, on the 26th of July, so leading up to the event, she was able to confirm that Friday the 16th of August from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. was the premiere of Sirius, with an introduction by Dr. Stephen Greer in person at Bond University on the Gold Coast at Basil Sellers Theatre. And then 9:30 to 11 p.m., he was doing a presentation called The Promise of Universal Peace, and obviously what the charge was. So again, we're able to kind of hone in and get a little bit more information about these events, where they took place, when they took place, and so on, and have cooperation from other folks. So where do we go from there? Well, I was able to find, it took me a long time, but I was able to find on Sharon's Facebook photos from the event, the premiere, as well as those 2-day intensive training workshops that Dr. Stephen Greer conducted at Bond University. And so we can see here clearly that Dr. Stephen Greer is presenting at Bond University, and I've included the source of this information. So if you want to have a look at it yourself, you can. Clearly shows Dr. Stephen Greer doing a lecture or presentation on his subject matter. And you can see he is walking the audience through, obviously, footage that he's captured and collected over the years, and walking him through evidence, taking photos, and doing, obviously, maybe signings, book signings with folks after the event. And these are photos presumably from the 2-day intensive workshop in the days following the premiere. And perhaps Dr. Stephen Greer didn't want photos to be taken, but those photos are all in public domain. So what happens after I'm able to track down this information? Well, again, my good friend and great researcher on X at TP-Loft 2008 was able to, and there's obviously some other photos from the event, people taking photos with Dr. Stephen Greer and so on. So X user at TP-Loft 2008 was able to find some more information on the internet, either in past date blogs or Wayback Machine. This is a bit hard to see, so I'm going to read it for you so you can see the context. And this was also posted by that same individual that I had reached out to, that source who's asked me to keep them anonymous. This was a post that she had put out there: request to those who participated in the 2-day intensive with Dr. Greer, 17 and 18th August. And she writes, greeting fellow CE5ers. I would have posted this earlier, but have had the flu and didn't feel like looking at the computer, but enough about me. If you were one of the 97 participants at the 2-day intensive with Dr. Greer, 17-18 August 2013, I would like you to do the following, but only if you want to. Please write up a field report of your own personal experience during the outside evening field training, which took place from 8 p.m. to 12:30 a.m.-ish on the 17th and 18th, or just the 18th if you want. I would like you to email your experiences to me at redacted if you could put the following info on there. And so obviously soliciting some information and feedback. So there we have confirmation that this 2-day, this premiere took place on the 16th. We have a 2-day intensive workshop lecture on the 17th and the 18th, as well as some field CE5 events that took place late in the evening, 8 p.m. to about 12:30 a.m. So again, some other nuggets that I was able to use to try and track down more information. And so the images that I found of Dr. Stephen Greer presenting at Bond University, in the description of that YouTube video, and again, I've redacted information that would reveal the identity of the individual that's asked me to keep that information private, but you could do your homework and find it. In the description of the YouTube video, and you can see that's clearly an image of Dr. Stephen Greer presenting at Bond University, it says in the description, Dr. Stephen Greer, Australian Serious documentary release on the 16, 17, 18 of August 2013, I should say, at Bond University, Gold Coast, facilitated by Redacted, including a training and field trip. This is the puja and meditation from the training field event. He's talking about the video. So it's an audio recording of the puja and meditation from the field event that was held at a private property in the Gold Coast hinterland. Again, some actionable intelligence that could allow me to keep digging. This puja and meditation was recorded during Dr. Greer's first ever sea SETI expeditions in Australia. So does that mean that that's the first trip that Dr. Stephen Greer has ever made to Australia? Not necessarily, but it tells us it's the first trip that he's made to Australia where he's done CE5 events. So again, some actionable information that we're able to try and follow up on. Bum down, head down, bum up, trying to find information pertaining to the private property in the Gold Coast hinterland where these CE5 expedition events took place between 8 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. on the 17th and the 18th of August of 2013. That led me to this information online, and I don't think I've put the link in the show notes below, but I will outside of this session. Here we have a blog article, a Weebly blog by an organization called smurf.org.au, Springbrook Mountain Extraterrestrial Response Force. So Springbrook Mountain, that again is intelligence that tells us a location. There is a video of a historical lecture that Dr. Stephen Greer did back in 2015, but this is what is of interest. And let me zoom in so it's a little easier on the eyes for everyone. I'll come back a bit. So again, apologies for my blindness, folks. So Dr. Stephen Greer, Sunday. Now they've got the dates. Sorry, the date is right here. Sunday, 18th August 2013, Springbrook. Smurf was honoured to host Disclosure Project legend Dr. Stephen Greer's Australian Sea SETI event, field work event on. The dates are wrong here. It should be the Saturday the 17th and Sunday the 18th. So that's incorrect. August 2013. Around 80 people. Slight contradiction with what that individual posted, saying there was 97 participants, but they're saying around 80 people from all over the world gathered at Smurf meeting Point Alpha on Springbrook Mountain, where the following extraordinary images were recorded by a Smurf photographer. These images presented have not been edited, augmented, or processed in any way other than resized for the web, and were captured by an 850 nm infrared sensor modified Canon 600D camera with an f-stop 1.8 50mm lens. Upon capture, each of the images were immediately presented to the sea SETI participants from the camera back viewfinder on the night they were recorded in what was one of the most furtive contact evenings ever. Many thanks to Dr. Stephen Greer for his generosity in allowing these images to be captured on the night of Sunday the 18th and reproduced on our website. And you can see there are images that are included in this blog of some of the images that were captured during that CE5 event on those 2 nights. So again, validation, confirmation that Dr. Stephen Greer was at this Springbrook Mountain property in the Gold Coast conducting some CE5 events. So again, very, very interesting. Now, it didn't really tell me a whole lot about, well, what does that have to do with potential engagement with an Australian Minister for Defence? But it doesn't end there, because if we have a look at, just if you're curious, I don't know if your comments have come through, so short order cook, you didn't have to do that. Thank you, my friend. Very generous $10 super chat. I really appreciate your support, my friend. That is very, very kind of you. So thank you for your generosity and support. So let's have a look at, let's pull up Google Earth. And so we can see, well, first and foremost, where is Bond University? Well, it's in Queensland. So let's pull that up and take a trip to where Bond University is. So we can see that it's on the Gold Coast. Pretty impressive facility. I've been to the Gold Coast. I've never been to Bond University. So how far from Bond University is Springbrook Mountain? Well, let's pull up Springbrook Mountain. And it's actually not very far at all. It is approximately 37 kilometers, or a 48-minute car drive from Bond University. So at this point, didn't really have a whole lot of other information to go on. So I reached out to my source again, who was the author of those blog posts, and had some more correspondence via text message. And the individual revealed, and I read this before, but I didn't reveal all of the info, so I'm going to read it for you now. So she said in its entirety, when he was here, being Greer, in 2013, he briefly dropped names of heads of departments and said he was meeting them at some yearly gathering at Hamilton Island. Now, those of you in Australia know that Hamilton Island is located in Queensland, as is the Gold Coast. I questioned him how true this was. I couldn't get proof if it was a real thing. So she then went on to write a little bit later on in a future follow-up message. He had a piece of paper, waved it around, literally, looked like name was printed on it. Print was very small. Couldn't see the content. He didn't say any names either. So I was a little sus on the authenticity of the list / meeting. But she was unable to verify the veracity of that. But she is she's recounting her recollection that Dr. Stephen Greer had made the claim to presumably this person and others that he was going to attend this private meeting with government defense officials at Hamilton Island. So again, some actionable intelligence that I was able to use to try and dig more information. So, well, let's pull up, how far is Hamilton Island from Springbrook Mountain? And as you'll see, it's a bit of a ways, but it's not that far. It's approximately 963 kilometers, or about just shy of 5 hours flight time. So now we have information saying that, well, Dr. Greer claimed that he had met an Australian Minister for Defence, approximately 10 years ago, which brings us back to the year of 2013. He was at the Sirius premiere in Bonn University in the Gold Coast on the 16th of August, 2013. He did a 2-day workshop, Bonn University, 17 and 18. He did a two CE5 events in the evening of the 17th to the 18th at Springbrook Mountain. And he had made a claim that he was going to attend an annual gathering at Hamilton Island, where he was to meet government and or defense officials, presumably to brief them on his work, UAP, UFO topic. So again, we're kind of getting all these breadcrumbs that lead us to more and more information. So I tried to do my homework and find, okay, well, between the dates that Dr. Stephen Greer was in Australia, and we know that he was definitely here on the 16th of August for the premiere of Serious Disclosure, which means he would have had to get here at least 1 or 2 days prior. So let's say at the earliest he got here on the 15th of August. He was in Joshua Tree for Contact in the Desert on the 11th of August, which is the 13th, 12th, 13th in Australia, because we're there a day behind. So let's assume that he's in Australia from the 15th of August. And he tells us in that first post that I showed you that on the 11th of September, he just got back from his 6-week world trip. So we can make an assumption there that there's a window of dates, the 15th of August to potentially the 10th of September, that Dr. Stephen Greer is in Australia. And he's telling this individual that's closely, has a close connection to Dr. Stephen Greer and attended these events, that Dr. Stephen Greer had claimed that he was invited to an annual gathering at Hamilton Island to meet with government defense officials. That all falls in within this window of dates. So I tried to find out, well, what historical events were happening at Hamilton Island during those window of dates. And I couldn't find really anything that was government-related, defense-related events, nothing. But there was one significant event that happened in that window of dates that Dr. Stephen Greer was in Australia. And so let me pull up, I did some homework and I pulled up on the Wayback Machine, the Audi Hamilton Island Race Week. This was the 30th anniversary of Hamilton Island Race Week. And when did it take place? The 16th to the 23rd of August. Actually, no, that's the wrong year. I'm looking at the wrong one. It was the 2013 one that we wanted. So, sorry, that gives you information about Race Week. But if I pull up the 2013, that was the 14 one. See if I've got. I think it was this one that we wanted. So that was information about the 2014, but we know that the Hamilton Island Race Week took place in 2013. That was the 30th anniversary. So let me pull up. Well, actually, I don't even need the website because there's other corresponding information that I'll show you. But there was this Hamilton Island Race Week that took place in 2013 from the 17th of August to the 24th of August. And so let me show you, I think this is the 2013 one. Here we go. This is what I'll show you. So that was just general information about this Hamilton Island Race Week. This tells us that there was a Hamilton Island Race Week in 2013. And this is the Wayback Machine of calendar events. Saturday, the 17th of August, which was the first day of Dr. Stephen Greer's 2-day workshop. All of these events that were scheduled, offshore events. So Hamilton Island Race Week is a basically sailing event, a yacht race. Kind of like the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, but it takes place prestigious sailing and yacht racing event in Hamilton Island. And in 2013, it was the 30th anniversary. So it was a pretty significant event. And you've got all of these offshore events taking place over those dates. You know, everything from social activities, Monday the 19th, Tuesday the 20th, 21st. And towards the back end of the event, Thursday the 22nd, where is it? I think it's Friday the 23rd and Saturday 24th, there are some pretty, significant dinners. There is there's a dinner which is $180 per person. There are some VIP invite-only events. So there are some pretty significant events and dinners that are taking place at this Hamilton Island Race Week. So what was the Hamilton Island Race Week all about? Let me show you a video that I was able to track down that gives us information about what Hamilton Island Race Week was all about. So there you go. So, pretty significant find. There was this 30th anniversary, an annual gathering, an annual event of Audi Hamilton Island Race Week, taking place at exactly the same time that Dr. Stephen Greer was in Australia, immediately after his series premiere and CE5 lectures and training expedition. So again, sheer coincidence, and the fact that this source claimed that Dr. Stephen Greer had stated that he was attending an event at Hamilton Island. Perhaps it is a coincidence, but it's certainly a bit of information that's worth following up on. So again, another rabbit hole, as Jimmy rightly points out, many rabbit holes that I ended up following, just doing some homework. So how does this all tie back to the then Australian Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith? So, well, I thought, well, seeing as Stephen Smith's not going to respond to me and tell me if he's ever met with Dr. Stephen Greer, I thought I would pull up some information on Stephen Smith, the then Australian Minister of Defence, on Wayback Machine. So this is the Stephen Smith, the then Minister for Defence's homepage on Wayback Machine, the official website for him as Minister for Defence. And I thought, well, maybe I can try and track down some information pertaining to any events that Stephen Smith had attended, maybe during that window of dates that Dr. Stephen Greer was here in Australia. And so this particular page on Wayback Machine only showed media releases going to the 2nd of August. And we know that Stephen Smith was the Australian Minister of Defence up until the 18th of September of 2023. So I went forward a couple of Wayback searches and was able to pull up a more recent version of his page, even though it has David Johnston listed, because I imagine the time of this page, David Johnston was either had already commenced his tenure as Minister of Defence or was about to. So we have some media releases on the then Minister of Defence's page, Stephen Smith, telling us he had what his events were. And if we look at, these are the events within the window of dates that Dr. Stephen Greer was here. So 28th of August, nothing between the 2nd and the 28th. And that is, there are some dates there that are unaccounted for, that we don't know what Stephen Smith was doing. But we do know that he was attending the ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting in Brunei on the 29th of August. So we imagine then okay, well, there are some dates that he could not have met with Dr. Stephen Greer because he was traveling to Brunei for this Defence Ministers Conference. So there is a date that we can cross out and strike from the potential list of dates that Dr. Stephen Greer may have engaged. You see, today, Wednesday the 28th, I depart Australia for Brunei. Okay, so we know that 28th of August is out. We know that the 29th of August is out because he's still in Brunei. We know that from this media release on the 1st of September that the 31st of August is also out, because he states in this historical media release, once it comes on page, on the 31st of August, I laid a reef at the commemorative service at the State War Memorial of Remembrance, Kings Park, honoring the 53rd anniversary of the cessation of the Malayan emergency, etc. So that 31st of August was out. Again, we're working on the assumption that Hamilton Island is the location where Dr. Stephen Greer has met with government officials and defense officials. So the last available post on the 4th of September, leading up to Stephen Smith's completion of his tenure, wrapping up as defense minister on the 18th of September. This tells us that on the 4th of September, I visited the Australian War Memorial, which is in Canberra. So there are a number of dates that we can strike out as possible dates where, if there was a meeting between Dr. Stephen Greer and the then Defense Minister for Defense, the then Minister for Defense, Stephen Smith, we can strike out those dates. So that still brings us, there is a window of dates there where Hamilton Island Race Week is a possibility. So let's then come back to our slide deck and ask the question, well, how plausible is it that the then Minister for Defense, Stephen Smith, may have attended Hamilton Island Race Week to engage in conversations or a briefing with Dr. Stephen Greer? So let's pull up our deck once again. And this is Stephen Smith at approximately that time in 2013-14, circa that year. So the question I asked, well, how plausible is it then that that Stephen Smith, the then Minister of Defense, may have met with Dr. Stephen Greer at Hamilton Island Race Week, per the claim that this source has reported to me, that Hamilton Island was the venue where this annual gathering was taking place, and he was invited to speak with government and defense officials. So, well, first and foremost, we have to ask, well, what would be the motivation for Stephen Smith to even attend Hamilton Island Race Week in the first place? Would that be the venue that maybe they had agreed to meet at, in a very discreet fashion, or was there some other level of involvement that Stephen Smith had with Hamilton Island Race Week? Well, with the research that I was able to do on Stephen Smith, we know that he has an affinity with sailing. This is a photo taken of him with others at the 75th anniversary of the, it's called the Maylands Yacht Club in Western Australia. This was taken back on October 2021. So this would suggest to me that, well, maybe Stephen Smith has a love for sailing, and if he's a member of a yacht club, is it a stretch to think, well, would he then make a visit to the 30th anniversary of the Hamilton Island Race Week? A pretty extraordinary and pretty special event. Going back even further, we're able to then confirm that, if I pull this up for you, that an article that appeared in the Perth Voice Interactive in 2014, so this is, just a little over a year after Hamilton Island Race Week, between, was it 17 to 24 August, that Stephen Smith actually took over as the patron from Terry Gawn, as he took over as the patron of the Maylands Yacht Club. Now, Terry Gawn, this old gentleman here, had been patron for 29 years, and the former Labor Defence Minister is taking over. Now, why on earth would at that point in time, the former defense minister would be taking over from this individual. He says, I'm a great fan of the club. And Terry's a family, so it's a great honor to be patron. Now, patron isn't typically an honorary position, where the role of a patron is kind of to advocate for the mission of the club, its social calendar events, its objectives, increase membership and so on, promote the activities of the club. So it's clearly obvious, and I was able to kind of find from this article that it's pretty evident that for Stephen Smith to be become the patron of Maylands Yacht Club, he's had to have been involved in the club on and off for a number of years, attending events, supporting the club. Whether or not he is a yachtsman, a sailor, it doesn't actually say too much in this article, but I'll come back to this article in just a moment. But I found it to be a very interesting, perhaps, coincidence that Stephen Smith has an affinity with sailing, and you've got this annual regatta taking place in Hamilton Island, where Stephen Greer is claimed to be meeting government officials at Hamilton Island Race Week, potentially. So again, another rabbit hole that we can try and follow. Now, the all-important question is, well, did a government minister attend Hamilton Island Race Week in 2013? And the answer is yes, they did.
Celebrating the launch of Audi Hamilton Island Race Week 2013, the Yacht Club played host to the 30th year welcome cocktail party. Minister for Tourism, Major Events, Small Business and the Commonwealth Games, the Honourable Jan Stuckey officially opened the regatta.
In its 30th year, tell me a bit about how it feels to be here tonight.
Look, to be sharing the excitement that we have here for Hamilton Island Race Week in its 30th year is nothing short of spectacular. I mean, look at the weather, look at the attractions around us, and there's all of these magnificent boats in the water too.
Boat owners, skippers, VIPs, island visitors and a very proud Bob Oatley.
Good evening, fellow sailors and people that love fun. I'm so pleased to welcome you here to the Hamilton Island Race Week and to enjoy it with us all.
As the champagne flowed and the fireworks burst with enthusiasm into the night sky.
But as far as I can tell, it wasn't the Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith, that attended Hamilton Island Race Week in 2013. It was this Jan Stuckey, who is the Minister for Tourism. And it makes sense that the Queensland Minister for Tourism is attending and even opening an event of that significance, the 30th anniversary. And that's clearly evident as well by the ministerial diary record of Jan Stuckey. We can go through this document, which tells us the ministerial diary for Jan Stuckey between the 1st of August to the 30th, that whole month. And they've got the date wrong when they've listed it here, but we can assume they mean the 2013, where we can clearly identify that Jan Stuckey was scheduled to officially open Hamilton Island Race Week. Now, again, I haven't been able to find any supporting documentation that Stephen Smith, the then Minister for Defence, attended Hamilton Island Race Week. And if he did, you think there would be some form of public record. So I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request. Let's see if I can pull this up for you. This was on the 2nd of July. I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for the ministerial calendar, ministerial diary for the then Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith, for the date range of the 10th of August 2013 and the 31st of August 2013. Now, they came back and they responded saying the Department of Defence does not hold the calendar diary you've requested. The National Archives all of the information, like ministerial diary, is forwarded to the National Archives. So no cigar, unfortunately, chasing this down through FOIA, but I have submitted a search request through the National Archives. So I haven't received a response yet, but that should be able to tell us definitively Stephen Smith's movements during that date range, those windows of dates. So again, it's looking less and less likely at this juncture, at this point, going down the rabbit hole, that Stephen Smith attended Hamilton Island Race Week. Now, is it possible that that was not the event taking place? If what Stephen Greer is saying is true, that it did, an event did take place, an annual gathering took place in Hamilton Island. Well, maybe it wasn't Hamilton Island Race Week. So I have submitted several inquiries to, let's just pull this one up. I believe this is the right one. Let's have a look. I think this is the right one. There we go. So I submitted an email on the 12th of August. Again, this email is public domain, asking the Hamilton Island Race Week team. I'm a private independent researcher currently undertaking some research on the 30th anniversary of Hamilton Island Race Week, held from 17th to 24th of August 2013. As I note, the then Minister for Tourism, Major Events, Small Business, Commonwealth Games of Queensland, the Honourable Jan Stuckey, attended and officially opened the Hamilton Island Race Week on the 17th of August. Could you kindly confirm if any other Australian federal and or state government ministers, officials attended any of the scheduled events during the Hamilton Island Race Week? Any information would be greatly appreciated. 2 follow-ups since that initial email, no response, disappointingly, and my calls have gone unresponded as well. So I thought, all right, well, let's fire off an email to Hamilton Island. There is, Hamilton Island has one conference center. So is it possible that there were some other events taking place during those windows, the window of dates that Stephen Greer was in Australia? Again, excluding the dates that we know Stephen Smith, the Minister for Defence, was in other parts of the country or abroad. Hi, Hamilton Island conference team. Again, I am private independent researcher, currently undertaking some research, excluding the 30th anniversary of Hamilton Island Race Week, 17 to 24 August. Could you kindly confirm how many conferences, business events, and government meetings were hosted at Hamilton Island between 19 August to 10 September inclusive? Now, those are the windows of dates that we know Stephen Greer could have been in Hamilton Island. The 19th was the last date that he was doing the second day of the training workshop and the CE5 events till late in the early hours of the next morning. So if it's true that he did attend an event on Hamilton Island, it's more than likely between that window of dates. If one or more were scheduled, I would greatly appreciate if you were able to disclose the names of those conferences, business events, government meetings. Now, do you think I received a response to those inquiries? That email and 2 follow-ups. No cigar. No one wants to share any information, which is incredibly disappointing. So that's kind of where this journey ends. That's as far as I've been able to go at this point in time. So I'm still going to continue to follow up and see what more information I can find. But at this point, and if you want to respond to the poll, if it appears in the chat, feel free. But let me know what you think. Do you believe Dr. Stephen Greer briefed an Australian Minister for Defence or the Australian Minister for Defence in 2013? At this point of my digging, I'm inclined to say it's highly unlikely because you also need to consider, well, what was happening in Australia at that time? Now, we know that on the 7th of September of 2013, the Australian federal election was taking place. Now, you can bet your bottom dollar that's pretty much all hands on deck in the lead up to an Australian federal election. In addition, we also know that the Australian Minister for Defence was, based on that list of Ministers of Defence that I showed at the front of this episode, that he was scheduled to conclude his tenure as Minister of Defence on the 18th of September. So why would an outgoing Minister of Defense in the weeks prior to his departure of Minister of Defense, why would he meet with Dr. Stephen Greer to discuss the UAP UFO topic? It doesn't really make sense to me. We also know, based on the reporting from the ABC, that Defense Minister Stephen Smith was scheduled to retire altogether from politics. So he was quitting politics altogether. He wasn't renewing his federal seat in Western Australia. He wasn't contesting that seat at the election on the 7th September. He was retiring. He was hanging up the political gloves. Now, he's obviously since made a comeback. He's now the High Commissioner for Australia and the UK, but he was hanging up his gloves. And we know that, just a little after a year after Hamilton Island Race Week, he was now the patron of the Maylands Yacht Club in Western Australia. So he was obviously committing his time to other activities that he was passionate for. So if you ask me now if I think Dr. Stephen Greer briefed the then Australian Minister of Defence, Stephen Smith, during his 2013 visit to Australia, I'd have to say no. I don't think it is looking likely, only based on the information that I've been able to dig up and present to you, obviously, in this episode. What I think is more plausible is that we know that Dr. Stephen Greer has a history. Let me just show you this on the screen. Dr. Stephen Greer has a history of briefing government officials, presidents, ministers of defense by written correspondence. And this is an example of a letter that he submitted to the UN Secretary General on the 6th of July of 2001. And this is taken directly from his disclosure intelligence archive that he has made public available on his website. So when Dr. Stephen Greer uses the word briefing, I think he's using that word extremely loosely, and maybe it is a gross misrepresentation and exaggeration of what a briefing represents. When I hear the word briefing, I think of someone meeting them in an in-person capacity and actually briefing them in person. Now, again, Dr. Stephen Greer has said he met the Australian Minister for Defence, and expanding on that, extending to perhaps a briefing in person. But again, we know from, Dr. Stephen Greer has a track record of just submitting written correspondence. This is a more recent example. This is a letter, it's hard to see, but this was a letter that he wrote to then candidate Donald Trump on June 14th of 2016. And that letter and a package of briefing materials was delivered to Donald Trump or Donald Trump's team at the 2016 National Republican Convention. So he hasn't, my take is that he never briefed Donald Trump in person, but he's written him some correspondence. He said, have a look at this. And that's why I'm saying I briefed Donald Trump on the UFO UAP topic. So that is where I think there is an exaggeration potentially by Dr. Stephen Greer, and that when he says he's briefed ministers for defense, it could be that he has simply just sent them a letter or send them correspondence via email, and that's his representation of him delivering a briefing. So these are just some examples that, and kudos to Jimmy for finding this information, pointing me to it and sharing it with me from Dr. Stephen Greer's Defense Intelligence or Disclosure Intelligence Archive, because I think it's an important piece of the puzzle to consider when we hear these claims being made by Dr. Stephen Greer that he has briefed ministers for defense, he's briefed presidents, and so on. I think we have to consider that seriously as well. So yes, Jimmy, kudos to you, my friend, for being able to track that information down and sharing it. So where do I have some concerns? I have some concerns because only recently, and if you're subscribed to Dr. Stephen Greer's mailing list, you probably would have received this, but this was a post just from his X account, promoting an upcoming workshop and screening of his latest documentary, The Lost Century, in London. And this is scheduled to take place on Sunday, the 8th of September. And if you have a look at what he is charging people to attend this event, it's pretty insane. If you pull up this event page, he's obviously, there is a fee involved to attend, fair enough, but he's charging, let me pull this up so you can see it. $1,500 a pop, $1,500 to enjoy a private dinner and reception with Dr. Greer and preferred seating at the lecture workshop. This is a special fundraising event to support the Disclosure Project and the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, which is Dr. Greer's digital archive of research collected over the past 34 years. Very limited space available. And the issue that I have, and this is based on what Jimmy has looked at so far, and a lot of the stuff that he's tried to track down on, there's no documentation or very little documentation in Dr. Greer's Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive that pertains to Australia. There's a few bits and pieces about Westall, that's publicly available information. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, but a lot of the information that Jimmy's been able to find is just a blatant copy and paste of documents that are publicly available on the Black Vault or the National Archives website. So, there is just this huge tranche of already publicly available information that's been included in the Disclosure Project's Intelligence Archive. If Dr. Stephen Greer really did have a brief, delivered a briefing to or met an Australian Minister of Defence, well, hopefully he'd want to upload that correspondence or record of that correspondence to his intelligence archive. But there is nothing in there at the moment, as far as what Jimmy can see. So I have some concerns that, not only is Dr. Stephen Greer charging $1,500 a pop as a fundraising event to fund the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, which is filled with already publicly available information, again, like I said, from the Black Vault and the National Archives. But I'm concerned that we're seeing a track record from Dr. Stephen Greer that he has sent these briefing materials time and time again by way of written correspondence. And is that what he is really meaning when he says the word briefing? So I think we have to, again, take that all into consideration when we weigh up a claim of this nature that's been made by Dr. Stephen Greer. So again, if you ask me now, after I've tried to follow all of these rabbit holes, is it likely that Dr. Stephen Greer met and briefed an Australian Minister of Defence? Well, if you think about what we've covered today, I don't think he briefed any Minister of Defence in 2013, even though he was here in Australia. His dates coincided with a marquee event in Hamilton Island. I haven't been able to find any evidence to date to support the claim. Now I'll continue, and obviously when I track down the ministerial diary for Stephen Smith in August, maybe that will shed further light. But at the moment, if you ask me now where I'm leaning to that. I suspect the briefing probably was not an in-person meeting, as Dr. Stephen Greer has claimed. So you can reach your own conclusions. That's kind of where I got to. I hope that information has been of value and to a degree entertaining, because I wanted to take you on a bit of a ride and show you what I've been able to track down just over the course of the last month. Let's see, a couple of comments have come through. Jimmy, don't tell Mr. Smith was parading at Hamilton Island. I don't think he does, but I stand to be corrected. I could be wrong. I have to put my glasses on here to read some of the comments, folks, because I'm a bit behind and want to be able to catch up. Short order cook one. Could he have made an unofficial visit? Was he into yachting? So we know he was into yachting. Is it possible he made an unofficial visit? Yes, but being that the Minister of Defence was a pretty key and recognizable figure, I think there would have been some information, at least publicly available, either in reporting that he attended. Now, did he potentially attend discreetly? Possible, but do I think it's probable? No, I don't. Grant putting on a clinic on open source intelligence, trying to do my best to just chip away at what we can. Again, it would be really nice if Dr. Stephen Greer's media team just responded to my inquiry, or Stephen Smith's team responded and gave me a flat yes or no that he met Stephen Greer, but I haven't. So in the absence of that information, we have to try and open source it. Sure, was he a member of the yacht club on Hamilton? I'm not aware of Hamilton, but we know that he was certainly a member of the Maylands Yacht Club in West Australia, and he was a patron. So he's obviously had a keen interest in sailing. However, if we go back to that article, and this is why I bring this back up, it says, where is it? There we go. This is where it's key. Despite having a long association with the club, Mr. Smith, being Stephen Smith, concedes his sea legs need work. My interest in sailing stops at the landline. So that possibly means that he was just interested in sailing in general. He liked attending a lot of the functions and activities at the Maylands Yacht Club. He wasn't necessarily a yachtsman. I haven't found any information showing that he even had a yacht or was on any boats for yachting. So take that direct quote from Stephen Smith as it is, and telling you that he loves yacht clubs and the events that are associated with them, but he's not a boatsman, he's not a yachtsman. So again, just another direct quote that's a piece of the puzzle. So that was interesting. We have a comment here from, again, Ice Rain J, but that would be a cover for secret meetup, wouldn't it? Well, again, that's a possibility. I'm open to receiving new information that points to a meeting. Now, if it was a very indiscreet meeting and it was classified, again, I don't know what classified information Stephen Greer would be sharing, but let's take that as something that's possible. Then it could be that it was a very indiscreet meeting and there's no public record of it. But just the nature of the Australian minister, any government minister at a federal or state level, there is a ministerial calendar. So you would think that there is some audit trail of events and venues that a Minister for Defence is attending. And that's all FOIable as well. I mean, if the Minister of Defence did attend Hamilton Island Race Week, well, there would be some form of travel log or audit trail pertaining to his travel logistics for him to get up there and so on. So again, you would think there would be some form of audit trail. I just haven't seen any evidence to date to indicate that a meeting did take place, even though there's this incredible coincidence that all of the dates seem to line up. So again, I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying I haven't found any evidence to date to support Dr. Stephen Greer's claim. It seems to be perfect of timing with all that going on at the same time. It certainly does. But again, could it just be a sheer coincidence? Possibly. Could it be something that there is some weight to it? That's a possibility as well. I'm only leaning the way I'm leaning at the moment based on the lack of supporting evidence that I've been able to find, and what we know was happening in Australia at the time with the federal election. The fact that the Minister of Defence was concluding his tenure less than a month's time, and he was retiring from politics altogether. And I doubt that the incoming Defence Minister, David Johnston, he would have had a hell of a lot of stuff on his plate as the incoming Defence Minister. So that's certainly another avenue worth exploring, and I'll continue to explore it. I don't think the story necessarily ends with the content that I'm presenting for you today, and I'll try and do a follow-up if there's more information that comes to light. Personally, if Greer is making the claim, is it incumbent on him to sustain his claim? Grant is doing Greer's job for him. Yeah, I think it's a shame that Dr. Greer is not backing up his claims with supporting evidence, which is why a lot of people raise their eyebrows or cringe a little bit when they hear Dr. Stephen Greer make a claim. If someone makes a claim, I agree. They should back it up with some supporting, some verifiable evidence. So I'm trying to do what I can just to validate or invalidate his claims using open source information. Zane, go to Greer's Disclosure Project archive. He has some documents in forms of emails and letters that he has sent and said replies. In my opinion, Greer stating that he has briefed folks means emails and letters. Again, and that's certainly a possibility. But, you know, we're working on the claim that Dr. Stephen Greer made that he met an Australian Minister for Defence. So that means to me that he met him in person. Zane, where you have to stand on a ladder, lean right, and look through a straw to understand what they mean doesn't sit well with me. It's a good point. Mr. T, cash cow. The upcoming London event. Yep, $1,500 a pop. I mean, you'd have to be a pretty big fan of Stephen Greer to pay that amount of money. I know I certainly wouldn't. He has never been one of shy of asking for dollars, and he seems to get it. Yep, all of his documentaries have been, crowd-funded, haven't they? So, you know, we've got to keep that in mind as well. Mr. T, for a person so adamant about disclosure and free energy, which always asks people to open source it, but ironically, he changes for his stuff. UAP AARO, great transparency on your research, Grant. Thank you for your work. Thank you, my friend. Again, just trying to do what I can. If someone makes a claim that pertains to the UAP UFO topic and Australia, that piques my interest, and I want to try and get to the bottom of it. And another example of that is Chris Bledsoe. You know, he has made the claim that the Australian Department of Defence and someone from the Australian Department of Defence engaged him on his experiences. So that is another research project that I'm working on, and hope to be able to bring some information on that down the road. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate your support. Sure to cook valuable research, Grant. So interesting. Thank you, my friend. And thank you, Mr. T, for your support. So again, you pay out there. Flares and planes aren't cheap. Mic drop moment. Boom. All right. So I hope that's been interesting, folks. If you need to jump off, feel free. I did want to give folks that are interested a bit of a lay of the land of some of the things that have been happening close to home recently. So we can kind of now move away. Let's leave in the dust Dr. Stephen Greer. Before I do, however, I will leave with you one final video clip from Dr. Stephen Greer. And this was on the 12th of June of last year at his National Press Club event. And again, all the links are in the show notes below to the videos that I've shown today, with the exception of the Hamilton Island Race Week one. So if you want to watch any of those interviews of Dr. Stephen Greer or his National Press Club event, you can. But this is what I'll leave you with. This is what from, before we move away from Greer, the 12th of June of last year.
Line forward is now, this is all emergent. I just heard from a very important figure in Australia this morning. He said the defense sector there is following this. There are multiple people there going to come forward. There's a big asset base there in their Pine Gap, and the members of the Australian Senate are also open to pursuing this. So this needs to be a worldwide effort, not just United States. I have no idea what he's talking about there. That the Australian Senate, this is in June of last year. The only Australian senator that we know of that's taken the topic seriously is Senator Wish Wilson. And I can probably safely say that he hasn't had any engagement whatsoever with Dr. Stephen Greer. But what's this information that's coming out? Or, you know, someone's going to be coming out and revealing more information about what's going on, information about Pine Gap. Well, that claim kind of was a dead piece of rotting wood, wasn't it? Because nothing has come out since he stated that pertaining to someone coming out in Australia, and that the Senate is taking interest in it. The only, again, one that's taking any
interest is Senator Wish Wilson. So what is it that Stephen Greer is referring to there? Who has he spoken to that has said something about Australia taking this more seriously at the Senate level? That is news to me. So I would open up to you guys if you're interested to support me and find more information that tries to support Dr. Stephen Greer's claims about his meeting of and engagement with an Australian Minister of Defence, or the statement that he just made at the National Press Club last year. Let's crowdsource it. If you can find any information and you want to share that with me or present what you find yourself on social media, please do. Please feel free to reach out to me and let me know, because I would love to know what you find. I obviously don't have a ton of time to invest ongoing research into this particular subject matter. So if it's something that's important to you, please feel free to try and do your homework, open source it, and let me know how you go. Thank you, Zane. Many thanks to the Honourable Senator for engaging on this topic, and thank you, Grant, for assisting. Yes, thanks to Senator Wish Wilson, who again has taken a keen interest in this topic since October of 2021, and is the only Australian senator that has been asking questions about it to date. Now, if Stephen Greer is relying on information from Ross Coulthart, I don't know. I'm not too sure. I don't know. I can't speak for Ross, and I don't know how he feels about Dr. Stephen Greer. But if Dr. Stephen Greer has taken a keen, watchful eye and interest on the work that Ross Coulthart has done to date, is it possible that they've had some engagement? Maybe. I don't know. But I don't add a lot of weight to Dr. Stephen Greer's claim there at the National Press Club. But again, I'm open to seeing more information. So let's move away from Dr. Stephen Greer. I want to now very briefly tell you about a couple of announcements before, obviously, we get into some things that have been happening closer to home. Great pal of mine, Ryan Sprague of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. He does a weekly Somewhere in the Live Stream podcast. I've had the good fortune of being on with him a couple of times. A really wonderful upcoming event scheduled for the 1st and 2nd of September. That's in the US. It'll be the 2nd and 3rd in Australia. The 2nd annual ANOMACON event, free virtual conference. I had the good fortune of being invited to participate and present at last year's inaugural conference, and the link's in the show notes below. So if you're interested to have a look at what I presented at last year's conference, you certainly can. But I would certainly encourage you to check out ANOMACON if you're interested in all things anomalous. There's a really interesting mix and diverse cross-section of presenters. And let me give you a brief preview of what you can expect to see at this conference. So this is ANOMACON happening in the coming weeks, the 2nd and 3rd of September in Australia.
Welcome to ANOMACON. ANOMACON is a virtual conference on everything anomalous, live streaming on YouTube, Twitter, X, and on Twitch. Join us on September 1st and 2nd as over 24 speakers give presentations on everything from UFOs and aliens to ghosts and the paranormal, from Bigfoot and lake monsters to witchcraft and the occult. It's all happening at ANOMACON, and most importantly, it's completely free. To learn more about our speakers and the event, visit anomacon.com. We'll see you on September 1st and 2nd for ANOMACON.
So there you go, folks. Do check it out. Again, if you want to have a look at the presentation that I did from last year, feel free. And yes, you're rightly so, UAP Aotearoa. Ryan Sprague is based in Scotland, so it's quite possible then that those dates are applicable to us, the 1st and the 2nd. I'm not sure. When you jump on YouTube and you pull up, if you go into Somewhere in the Skies, Ryan Sprague's YouTube page, and you have a look at the dates, it'll obviously display the dates of the events in your local time zone. So good call. Thank you for pointing that out, Colin. So yeah, do check that out. I really enjoyed last year's inaugural event. I'm going to try and watch some of the events this year. Christina Gomez is one of the presenters. I really value a lot of the stuff she puts out there. She does some great research and puts out some great content. So do check it out if you're interested. So let's move away from that announcement and let's just share some FOIA updates that you may find interesting. So I was able to secure for release through the US Freedom of Information Act only very recently an additional document on AARO's Five Eyes inaugural UAP caucus meeting, which we know took place on the 24th of May of last year. So let me pull up this new document. Where is it? There you go. So I'll come on down. So those that follow me on X and watched the last month's live stream that I did, you'll recall that I talked about the meeting agenda that was scheduled for the inaugural Five Eyes UAP caucus working group meeting, where this document revealed to the world the agenda, that each of the Five Eyes member countries were afforded some time to present to all of the stakeholders at that meeting and talk about what their respective countries were doing at the Five Eyes Forum. And so this latest document that I was able to secure is kind of just an extension of that meeting agenda. And it was an email to Dr. Shawn Kirkpatrick, who likes the moniker of Dr. K, saying, below is the updated agenda for the Five Eyes meeting tomorrow. Attached is the list of attendees. That was completely redacted, a full page of redactions, which is frustrating, but they're protecting privacy information. Attached is a list of attendees from outside of our office. I've highlighted this point specifically. The briefing is essentially the same as the GISRC. However, redacted will be there to speak specific concerning their areas. So what is the GISRC? So I did not know initially what that was, and so I reached out to a few trusted advisors that were able to share some information with me. And there is some open source information. We know that what was shared with me was a document. There's a chapter of this document titled A Survey of Multi-Sensor Data Fusion Systems. This was authored by Mary L. Nichols, interestingly, of the Aerospace Corporation. And who do we know is currently employed by the Aerospace Corporation? None other than Eric Davis. And so if we do a keyword search in this document, we know that GISRC is an acronym for Global Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Capability. So I have FOIA'd for information pertaining to that briefing that AARO had pertaining to GISRC. I don't know a whole lot more other than what that acronym is at the moment. What we do know is that it has relevance to the USN, which is the United States Navy. And there are a few other documents that reference this as well. Not to be confused with the, there's an organization in Malaysia, which is the Geospatial Information Surveillance Research Center. So that's what I thought it was initially, an organization in Malaysia, but that makes no sense. Why would AARO be talking to them? So this is what it pertains to. There was a briefing that AARO conducted that pertained to global intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities. So I'll keep you posted on that front, what I find on AARO's briefing there. It'll take a while to obviously get any response. Why do I make reference to AARO's Five Eyes UAP caucus working group meeting? Because, and this was my hope, that the information that I was able to secure for release through FOIA, that would encourage others in other corners of the globe to do their homework and exercise their right to information and submit FOIA requests to their respective countries' governments, asking for information about what its country knew and had in its holdings pertaining to AARO's meetings. So the UK, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and obviously me trying to track down what I can for Australia. So if we have a look at, I'll pull up for you, this was I just want to show you a couple of tweets here. So Nick Pope, actually, I've got another. Nick Pope was able to track down some information through FOIA in the UK, and I'll pull up his original post so you can see. This is it, and I'll come back to that that article in just a moment. So on what was this, dated the 5th of August. So Nick Pope, who we know has had a relationship with an association with the Ministry of Defense, obviously standing up or working with the UFO officers, the UFO desk back in the 90s. He put a post out saying the UK government says it no longer investigates UFOs, but the MOD just confirmed to me that 2 members of staff from Defense Intelligence attended the inaugural Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon working group meeting held at the Pentagon last year. An interesting revelation. And so this is the letter the response letter that Nick Pope was able to receive. And he posted this on X, so it's all public domain. His name and his email address. 2nd of August, dear Mr. Pope, thank you for your email dated 8th July. Following our response to your freedom of information request dated 26th of June, your modified questions are as follows. So he asked MOD, how many MOD personnel attended the inaugural UAP caucus working group held at Pentagon 24th of May? What is the grade rank of those who attended? What division directorate did they come from? Did the individual or individuals who attended the meeting work in the Defense Intelligence staff? So they responded. Where they responded. So it says, in regards to questions 1 and 4, at the time of the meeting, 2 members of staff from Defense Intelligence were in attendance. They weren't really able to disclose the names or ranks of that individual because they wanted to protect privacy information. So as I have stated time and time again, I can say with a high degree of confidence that a representative from Australia's Defence Intelligence Organisation attended AARO's Five Eyes UAP caucus working group meeting. We now know that 2 members of the UK's, the MOD's Defence Intelligence Service attended, and presumably, trying to get information out of Defence Intelligence in the UK is exempt from FOIA, because we certainly know the Defence Intelligence Organisation in Australia is exempt from FOIA, so we can't get anything from them. So, but it's Five Eyes intelligence sharing makes sense that you would have members of the intelligence community attend those types of briefings, namely AARO's Five Eyes UAP caucus working group meeting. So, obviously, then Nick Pope was able to get this reported on in the press. And if I pull up, where is it? Just going to find it again. Apologies, folks. There we go. So Nick Pope posted on the 9th of August a link to an article. And so there was a good article, and I've linked it in the show notes below if you want to have a read of it. Express in the UK did an article. UK MOD sent 2 intelligence officials to classified Pentagon UFO summit. So it was great to see that the UK was covering this. In Australia, the Canberra Times has covered this. Liberation Times has also covered it as well, and I've added the link in the show notes below. And what I was really impressed with this article, because Nick Pope has obviously provided the journalist with some good background information on how this information came about. And I was pleased and pleasantly surprised to see. It talks about Nick Pope, how he submitted a FOIA request, and that it says very little is known about what went on at the meeting, being AARO's Five Eyes UAP caucus group meeting, but it was arranged by the Five Eyes an Anglosphere intelligence alliance comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States. They worked together on a treaty for cooperation in signals intelligence. And it was nice to actually get some credit here for breaking this story. Grant Lavac, UFO researcher based in Melbourne, Australia, obtained redacted parts of an agenda for the meeting under the US Freedom of Information Act. He posted them on X, adding AARO's Five Eyes Forum on UAP that was led by former AARO director Dr. Shawn Kirkpatrick. In May 2023 was officially called the Five Eyes Inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group. Today I received a copy of the meeting agenda through FOIA, and it goes on to the rest of what I had added to that post on X. So, kudos to Nick and the Express for obviously crediting me with breaking that information. So, not that I was expecting that, but it was nice to see that was included as part of some of the source material. Again, the good reporting that Chris Sharp is doing at the Liberation Times. This was an article that he put out after on the 4th of August, so relatively recently, again, talking about the UK government confirms 2 officials attended the UFO meeting with international allies. So again, following on from the good information that Nick Pope was able to secure for release, and nicely, Chris Sharp has credited me in that article as well as being the source of that AARO meeting agenda. So if you want to have a look at those articles, do give them a read. And most recently, only really in the last 1 to 2 days, Nick Pope was on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and he commented on the UK's 2 defense intelligence representatives attending this AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus Group meeting, and I thought his comments were rather pertinent. So let me play a clip for you of Nick Pope's comments on Weaponized. And again, obviously, this is just in the interest of fair use. So let me play this for you.
That's great. You'll have seen literally, I guess, in the last couple of days, the confirmation that the Ministry of Defence sent 2 intelligence officials to attend the inaugural Five Eyes UAP meeting that Shawn Kirkpatrick held at the Pentagon in May 2023. So information about this is coming out, and some people in the system do want to talk and do feel frustrated at the constraints. So yeah, hopefully you're pushing on an open door.
That Five Eyes things is really interesting because we had broken some stories on it as well and got nothing but grief about it. It can't be true, total denials, and now there's some substance behind it.
Yeah, I think that just goes to show that for all the skeptics who say there's nothing to all this, if you ask the right question, you do get these intriguing little nuggets released. And of course, publicly, the official position of the Ministry of Defence is, oh yeah, we're not interested in this subject, we closed our program. And then you find out, you have it indisputably on the record that these 2 intelligence officials were sent on a transatlantic trip to attend this Pentagon meeting. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't send people with the pressures on the defense budget transatlantic for a few days to attend a meeting on a subject that you're not interested in.
Right.
Come on, man.
Right.
Come on, man. I like the way you said that. Absolutely. Come on, man.
So very true. So Nick Pope makes a really good point there. Now we know that the defense representative, likely from the Defense Intelligence Organization, was based at the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C., so they didn't have far to go to get to the Pentagon. But you've got 2 defense intelligence representatives from MOD that have made that international flight. And look, if there's nothing to this, why are they being or I should say the UK and Australia, if they're not interested in this topic and they don't think there's anything to it, well, why are they going over to attend a briefing? They're clearly wanting to learn what the US has uncovered or provide updates to our US ally and Five Eyes partners. So, the public position of both Australia and the UK on UAP, I suspect, is incredibly different to the interest and engagement and information that is being shared behind closed doors. And unfortunately, we're probably never going to be privy to that information, certainly in Australia, because the likes of the Defense Intelligence Organization is exempt from FOIA. Now, who can get breadcrumbs? Someone the likes of Senator Wish Wilson, who is a participating member of the Senate Estimates for Defense, Foreign Affairs and Trade, and he can use some of the authorities that he has at his disposal as being a senator to maybe be privy to some of that classified information. So now, not that he will share that publicly, but at least our elected representatives are informed on the topic and knowing what the Australian Department of Defence and the intelligence community is doing with regards to this topic. Look at the contrast between U.S. congressmen and congresswomen in the United States, how open and transparent they're being on their interest and appetite, and how engaged they are on the topic, and contrast that with New Zealand, which we'll talk about in just a second, Australia and the UK. Canada is kind of being a little bit more open than certainly UK, Australia, and New Zealand, but it's such a significant contrast, and that's a contrast that I really don't understand why Australia, New Zealand, and the UK are being so cagey and lackluster in their appetite and engagement on this topic to date. So there is also another gentleman who I've had the good fortune of getting to know briefly in the UK. His name is Gary Heseltine, who is a former detective, and he is taking kudos to him for doing some great work in the UK on the UAP UFO topic. He has a blog, and I've included the link in the show notes below. He's obviously in his blog article, referenced a lot of the source material that I was able to uncover, as well as Larry Maguire in Canada. The letter that he received, basically, he goes into this in detail in a blog article, and I'll just read a couple of excerpts for you. Let me just come down to the information. So he says, 4 on the 5 Ives, with the cat seemingly out of the bag. Actually, I'm going to zoom on in so you can all read it. There we go. Where is it? There we go. Okay, so he talks about background information. With the cat seemingly out of the bag, a number of researchers began to focus on the Five Eyes Alliance. One of those researchers, obviously myself, was able to submit FOIA requests regarding his country's involvement in UAP topic, 2-page document at the top. It was his research that caused me to become involved in the Five Eyes research from the UK perspective. So it's great to see that it's not only Nick Pope who's trying to get some information on the UK side. His initial submissions have received a lot of online support from the likes of Krista Sharp, the Liberation Times, and fellow Aussie and researcher and author Ross Coulthart. Those submissions have revealed interesting aspects of the Five's involvement in UAP developments. Whilst there was a denial to his questions that Australia be involved in the UAP crash retrievals reverse engineering, but they revealed some information that clearly establishes that discussion on the topic or subject with its Five Eyes members is ongoing. It talks about the obviously revelations. So it was this revelation that prompted me, being Gary Heseltine, on June 24 to submit an FOIA to the MOD for further information. The submission was at the top. My submission was a simple request for information in light of the one-day UAP conference that had taken place in May. Who attended for the UK? What was the nature of the 45-minute UK update, etc.? I was a little coy in my approach to the classification status referred to in the response to Grant Lavac's submission. Coy because I already knew that the classification sequence TS, top secret, SI, sensitive information, TK, talent keyhole, which is satellite imagery related, REL, relative to the Five Eyes, meant, but my approach was to see if they would spell out the same for me in their response, related material. Obviously those acronyms, which if you think about it is rather odd based on the fact that UAK are officially not interested in UAP at all, supporting Nick Pope's comments on weaponized. The response from MOD on July 20th received a slightly unexpected response to my submission. Based on the questions I asked, the Defence Intelligence staff advised me that they were going to use their option of extending a further period of time to determine their response to my submission. It focused on 4 different clauses, namely sections 23, 24, 26, 27. Section 23 relates to security matters, as to not have a public interest test with S24 refers to national security. S.26 and 27 are involving international relations, and we're seeing these time and time again with the FOIA request responses that I'm getting. They're the exemptions often being cited. National security, don't want to impact international relations. It requested more time in order to assess whether the public interest aspect outweighed the exemption status to bar the release of the pertinent information I sought. The wording around S.24 is interesting because it refers to understanding potential threats, especially if it pertains to incursions into UK airspace. Similarly, S.26 refers to releasing information that could prejudice capability, effectiveness, and security of UK armed forces and in support of current or future operations. S.27 refers to information that would likely to hinder defence cooperation between allies. MOD contradictions. My bone of contention is that officially successive British governments have told the UK public that at no time in history of UFO UAP era has there been any threat associated to the topic, and thus it is not worthy of serious attention. Yet this FOI response and the considerations detailed within it clearly point to the very opposite. And then it goes on to talk about initiative by Ryan Graves of Americans for Safe Aerospace. So again, just gives you a sense as to the the hurdles and the challenges that folks across the pond like Gary and Nick Pope are coming up against, just trying to get information from their respective governments through FIO over there. And sadly, our friends across the pond in New Zealand are coming up against the same issues as well. Kudos to the great work that Colin at UAP, our AARO, has done. He's been submitting a number of OIA, Official Information Act requests comparable with FOIA to the New Zealand Defence Force across the pond. And let me zoom in so it's a little easier on the eyes for you all. This was a response letter that he received from the Honourable Judith Collins, who's the Minister for Defence, as well as the Attorney General in New Zealand. The response letter to Colin was, "Dear Colin, thank you for your letter received by office on 11 July, in which you requested, pursuant to the Official Information Act, the following information. Please provide all documentary evidence confirming engagement by and between the USA's AARO and the New Zealand Defence Force and or the New Zealand Ministry of Defence, and in particular all records concerning the initial Five Eyes UAP caucus working group that you're aware of." The response: "I have not received any such information, and therefore your request is declined pursuant to Section 18E of the Act, as this information does not exist." So the Minister for Defence in New Zealand has absolutely no idea what's going on with respect to AARO's inaugural UAP caucus working group meeting. Neither does the Australian Minister of Defence, Richard Marles, because I have not seen any evidence to date to indicate that he's even been briefed on UAP. And point in fact, documents I've received from the Royal Australian Air Force following inquiries that I've submitted in writing to Richard Marles have come back saying that the Royal Australian Air Force hasn't briefed Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defence, on UAP. So why has the leader of the Australian Defence Force and the leader of the New Zealand Defence Force and Minister of Defence, the Defence Minister, not even been briefed on UAP? Have they, and they're being extremely cagey about it, or is there a reason why they're not being briefed? Two words: plausible deniability. And if it is plausible deniability, what would be the rationale for there to have a need for plausible deniability with what we know in how open and transparent the US Department of Defense and US Congress is now being on its efforts to get to the bottom of the UAP issue? So much so that Congress legislated, mandated that AARO be stood up and it be dedicated to investigate this topic. And that one of AARO's legislative mandates is that it has to coordinate with allies and international partners of the United States to better understand the extent and nature of UAP. So plausible deniability, I don't think really holds any water for Australia and New Zealand, because our Five Eyes ally has already taken this topic so seriously. So why aren't you getting off your fat ass and, at least getting to the bottom of the potential implications for Australian national security and safety of flight risk, as well as New Zealand? And why is it important for New Zealand? I'll give you a great reason. Again, some great work that another Kiwi is doing across the pond. And this is from Nick, a good researcher in New Zealand, on the 6th of August. He said, it's been a real effort, and I think probably Colin and others in New Zealand would share these sentiments. This has been a real effort in refusals and rewording for this particular piece of info from September 19 to date, to current, 6th of August, from CAA, which is the Civil Aviation Authority in New Zealand. Previous dates were available through other requests online. They are still getting reported and noted. So what is he referring to there? Well, he's referring to, I quote tweeted Nick's fine. I said, great ALY, New Zealand FOIA finding by Nick. Observations of UAP UFOs have been reported to the Civil Aviation Authority of New Zealand via occurrence reports, which the Defence Aviation Safety Authority have in Australia, but they have no record of any occurrence reports for the last couple of decades of having any reference to UAP, UFOs, unidentified aircraft. One such incident references a very near miss with UFO on the 22nd of March, and this is the document. Now it's a bit hard to see, but I don't know if I can. Essentially, there is an occurrence number report. It took place on the 20th of March, and the brief description of the occurrence report is very near miss with UFO. Maybe a balloon, question mark, size 1 to 2 meters at 12,000 feet, 30 miles south of Wellington. So if, this is clearly indicating that there is, a clear and present safety of flight risk that UAP, or as indicated in the description, UFO, which it could be a balloon, could have just been misidentification, but nonetheless, what pilots are not able to readily identify or reconcile, that is being reported through occurrence reports in New Zealand to the Civil Aviation Authority. So for the Defence Minister in New Zealand to say, oh no, I don't have any information about AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus working group meeting, maybe because she hasn't even been briefed on UAP, is that a big issue? I think it is, because you've got, clearly there are some safety of flight risks on New Zealand side, and we know that in Australia as well, based on F-35 pilots that have had sit-downs with Ross Coulthart saying they're seeing things in Australian airspace they can't identify and readily reconcile, which could be a safety of flight risk. So, for the Ministers for Defence for New Zealand and Australia not to be briefed on UAP, I think is a real disservice to not just the tax-paying public, but also the men and women, the brave men and women that are at the front lines of the defence forces in Australia and in New Zealand. Another great researcher, individual that's exercising her right to information in Australia. That individual has asked me to keep their information anonymous, so I'm going to respect their right for anonymity. This is another example. This is another response letter that this individual received from the Defence Minister Judith Collins, saying, thank you for your letter received by office on 11 July. This is not Colin, this is someone else, in which you requested, pursuant to the Official Information Act, the following information. I kindly request to view relevant documents, 22nd May 2023 to present day, so obviously at the time of this submitted the request, that you're able to access in your role as Attorney General, Minister of Defence, GSCB, New Zealand SIS, I don't know what the acronym is off the top of my head, Science, Innovation, Technology and Space, and as a member of the Intelligence and Security Committee, which clarify what UAP information the New Zealand government is sharing within the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance and what the specific areas of mutual interest and concern are. Response: I've not received any such information, and therefore your request is declined pursuant to Section 18A of the Act, and as this information does not exist. So there is nothing crossing the Defence Minister's desk pertaining to the Five Eyes briefing that AARO invited all of its Five Eyes member countries to join, and share what it knows about UAP. Again, remember, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the UK were all asked to share information, present information at that briefing on what its countries are doing or not doing pertaining to UAP. And for the Defence Minister in New Zealand and Australia to have no comment on this whatsoever and say they haven't got any information, again, I think is an incredible disservice to the brave men and women in the Defence Forces. And it really doesn't bode well for transparency by our governments on this topic. So kudos again to Colin and that individual for doing their work, trying to get information from their respective governments. So the story is certainly not over for AARO's, Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group meeting. I've got a number of other pending FOIA requests that I hope will reveal and shed some more light in due course. But kind of as we come to the back end now, folks, I do want to get to some of the comments you've made. But before I do, actually, no, let's do that. Let's use that as a segue because I've been yapping away for a while here. Again, going to consult the old goggles. So apologies for the blindness, folks. Let's see, where are we? Just having a look at some of the other comments that have come through. Let me see here. Mr. T, Aussies don't get spoken about enough in this topic due to us being the lamb, was it the lamb or the sheep for the USA? It's kind of true, and that's what's so frustrating about this. The US says to Australia, jump, and we say how high. We're about to spend $500 billion on these, the acquisition, along with other things, the acquisition of these 3 Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines, nuclear powered, not nuclear armed. And we pretty much support every defense initiative that comes out of the United States. Australia and the United States could not be we're the closest of allies, but we could not be further apart when it comes to our positions on UAP. And we follow the US on everything except the UAP topic, which is so frustrating. Totally support your sentiments there, Jimmy. Yes, great work at Colin at UAP Aotearoa. You are doing some good work over there, my friend. So certainly keep it up. The more people that exercise their right to information, I think it's only going to help reveal more breadcrumbs over time. Shorter, a quick one. It must be plausible deniability. UAP UFOs are here. They must know this. Well, again, like I said, I think the intelligence community in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, it's clear that they know a hell of a lot more than what is being shared publicly by in Australia, the Royal Australian Air Force, Navy, Army, Defence Space Command. The Defence Force services in Australia aren't being briefed clearly to the same degree that the intelligence communities in Australia and I suspect New Zealand and the UK on what its countries know about the topic. The New Zealand Honourable Minister is across defence and intelligence portfolios. Interesting. That's a good point. So how is it possible that Judith Collins is across the intelligence portfolio and doesn't have any information pertaining to AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group meeting? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I would say that some follow-ups there, perhaps with the Ombudsman in New Zealand, to try and dig a little bit further, may help there. Or even if you are able to strike a friendship or a relationship with an elected representative in New Zealand that is now seeing what's happened in Australia. Obviously, Senator Whish-Wilson's taking this topic seriously. We've been able to show definitively that Australia is being incredibly deceptive and or incompetent by saying, oh no, we didn't attend. Oh no, yeah, sorry, we did attend. We didn't check our records correctly. Is that the same situation that's playing out in New Zealand? I don't know, but it's certainly worth following up and maybe having MPs start to ask questions on this topic too, if you find someone that is going to take the topic seriously. So yes, I support Zane's comments. Thank you for all you do on this topic, Colin. Your efforts are greatly appreciated, my friend. NZDIS, Security Intelligence Service. So thank you for pointing that out. Sorry, NS. NZSIS. So yeah, so again, kudos to Colin and those in New Zealand, and again to Gary in the UK and Nick that are doing their efforts. And I know John Greenwald's doing the same for the US, and Daniel Otis, good reporter, investigative journalist out of Canada. So let's now jump on over to last couple of things. I know I'm going to try my hardest. I'm adamant that I'm going to wrap this under 3 hours. So last couple of things I want to share with you all, because I know the last few have gone for upwards of 3 hours. So it's an incredibly long period of time. Let's just do the rundown. So a few things that have been happening close to home. This only came out yesterday. We know that Ross Coulthart put out a new episode on Reality Check. Really thought-provoking, fascinating, intriguing interview with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Cruikshank, who is, I believe, former intelligence, community intelligence service member. I have had the good fortune of knowing and have collaborated and corresponded with Jeff for probably upwards of 2 years now. I haven't shared that publicly, but there are a number of trusted advisors that I really rely on when I have questions, and I've been able to develop a working relationship with them, if you want to call it that, on UAP topic, and a friendship. So Ross and I, Jeff, and two wonderful researchers, Keith Basterfield and Bill Chalker, we engage frequently as a small group on what's happening, not just at home, but also within with abroad in the US, with the work that Ross is doing there. And we affectionately refer to ourselves as the Five Guys. The Five Guys. There's the Five Eyes and there's the Five Guys. So last year, actually, I had the good fortune of having Ross, Bill Chalker, and Jeff Cruikshank on my podcast. And it's no secret now that the world knows that Jeff Cruikshank had the handle of Reddit user Harry is White Hot. He's a brilliant researcher. He's done a ton of work on the topic, specifically in this interview that he does with Ross. He talks about the UFOs, the JFK and the Majestic 12 potential connection, and also talks about his research into a high altitude nuclear test in the 60s called Bluegill Triple Prime, which I talk about with Jeff in that episode from August of last year. If you want to have a look back at that, now that it's public knowledge that Jeff Cruikshank is this great researcher, Harry is White Hot on Reddit, have a look back at that episode if you so desire, because it was really interesting to learn from Jeff what he's been researching on this Bluegill Triple Prime high altitude nuclear test. So you can have a look back at that if you want. But yeah, I would encourage you to have a look at this latest episode of Reality Check. Fascinating, very, very interesting. I think Ross, as we all should do, asked some great skeptical questions, and he's quite agnostic on it all still. But kudos to Jeff for the great research that he's done to date, connecting a lot of the dots, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I think he's done a great job researching what he has. He's invested a lot of time, energy, and effort. How much of it is 100% accurate? It's still anyone's guess. But credit to him for doing some great work. And it truly was a great episode by Ross. So do have a look at it if you haven't already done so. The link is in the description below. And if you want to go back and have a look at that episode that I did with Ross, Bill, and Jeff, Monica, Reddit user Harry is White Hot, feel free to do so. Yep, very true, Jimmy. Very interesting conversation that Ross had with Jeff. Short of the quick one, Grant, do you have a list of Australian UAP UFO meetings or conferences that are upcoming during the year? It's a good question, and unfortunately Australia really doesn't have anything in the way of conferences. And I think there's one in Wycliffe in Queensland, but and there used to be, but unfortunately, I don't think there are any conferences in Australia, which is really disheartening, disappointing, because there are some obviously really great ones in the US, Contact in the Desert. You've got MUFON's annual symposium. You've got the SCU has its annual conference. You've got now the Soul Foundation, kind of invite only thing though. But you and there are tons of other conferences. You know, there's what is there? Another one that Jimmy Church always plugs. A consciousness one, but yeah, there's an interesting mix of conferences in the US. We don't have anything in Australia, which is really disappointing. There was some in-person events last year. You know, and Jimmy and I had the good fortune of attending a Q&A event and presentation that Ross Coulthart did in Melbourne in August of last year, and then he did that same event, different presentation at the Sydney State Library in October of last year, and I had the good fortune of attending both of them. But unfortunately, there's nothing that I'm aware of in Australia. There are, you know, a collection of UFO, UAP organizations in Australia that have monthly meetings, there's UFO, the UFO Research Organization for New South Wales. There's also the UFO Research Organization in Queensland. Point in fact, I've been invited to present at the UFO Research Organization Queensland's monthly meeting at the end of the month. So I was really touched, you know, chuffed and touched that they would invite me to present. So I'll be talking about what I've been able to uncover to date with Australia's lack of engagement on the UAP topic. But yeah, I don't think there's really any formal conferences. I think maybe there's an opportunity for some, though, based on the number of folks that I've come across in Australia that are interested on the topic. So perhaps there's an event organizer out there that has a keen interest on the UAP UFO topic in Australia, would like to maybe consider organizing a conference. I know I'd put my hand up and I'd be the first one to attend, and just get along and meet folks and network with folks. And if someone asked me to do a presentation, I'd be happy to do it as well. So yeah, unfortunately, nothing at the moment in really the way of conferences in Australia. Melissa, do you know anything about the UFO crash at Fountain Gate Shopping Centre? It was reported at Berwick News, 30th of May, 2001. Good question, and I believe that was all a spoof. That was all a hoax. It was there. I know exactly what you're referring to, and I saw, you know, Roger Stankovic had commented on it as well. Others that I am aware of, researchers, it was, I think, part of a publicity stunt to promote Fountain Gate Shopping Centre or something that was associated with it. Yeah, so unfortunately that was a work of fiction, but it was presented as something that was real. So no cigar there, unfortunately. Shorter to cook one, we are so lacking interaction on a big scale. It's frustrating. Completely agree with you. And I know there are many others, not just you and I, Short Order Cook One, that would love to see conference or some sort of events in Australia. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to all, you know, put something together and work on something. So who knows? So let's come to the last thing I wanted to talk you through today, folks, which is Frederick Valentich. Fascinating cold case, unresolved cold case from October 1978. The original air traffic control communications were recently released. I wouldn't say they were leaked. I would say they were released. And the individual that released it, if I pull this up for you, it's actually very fitting that this individual released it because this is a YouTube video put out by the UFO Research New South Wales organization. And a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to read this for you. So there is I'm going to put the link in the description below. This is only incredibly recent, the 9th of August. I don't think I can zoom on in on the description here, but I'll see if I can. Oh, yes, I can. Great. Perfect. There we go. So this was a presentation that was done by the UFO Research New South Wales on Frederick Valentich, and they were honoured to host Rhonda Rushton and Paul Spottiswoode for a compelling presentation of the Frederick Valentich case. Now, what is interesting for those that don't know, Rhonda Rushton is Frederick Valentich's, he was Frederick Valentich's 16-year-old girlfriend at the time. And she is the individual that's sitting down in that presentation. So I think it's fitting that she is the one to release the original recording of the air traffic control transmission. I've actually been privileged to hear the entire recording. It actually goes for about 18, 19 minutes. There's a lot of dead space in there, gaps between the transmissions back and forth between Valentich and the air traffic controller. I believe in this presentation, they had edited it down to about 6 minutes to kind of remove the gaps of dead space, because they're not always just talking back and forth. There are some pauses where they're not communicating. That's why it's upwards of 19 minutes in duration. But I think it was very fitting that this Rhonda Rushton, who is Frederick's 16-year-old girlfriend at the time, she was supposed to accompany him on the flight, but was delayed at work. Rhonda shared details about her in this presentation, about her relationship with Frederick, his background, and the events of that fateful day. She also discussed the tragic aftermath of his disappearance. And Paul Spottiswoode was 20 years of age, flew the exact same Cessna that Valentich did, and he was a person that was he was interested in the Frederick Valentich case, and I think he provides some insights. So it's a little bit hard to hear the recording, or not so much hear, but I found it even more helpful to listen to the recording on another video that was put out by, let me pull it up here, by there's a guy on X by the name of handle @UFOB. He did, he put out, here we go. He put out the recording with subtitles. So I'm going to play this for you. Hopefully no ads pop up as we go through. And, you know, if you're listening to it, if you close your eyes and you just listen to the recording, it is truly chilling, and it just gives you an insight into, you know, how calm and collected Frederick Valentich was, and gives you a sense as to what he was he was experiencing and seeing when he was transmitting to air traffic control in Melbourne. So I won't interrupt it. It goes for 6 minutes 38 seconds. I will put my disclaimer up because we'll talk about it as we come to the end. But for many of you, this may be the very first time that you are hearing this original recording. So we'll play it now.
Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any kind traffic below 5,000?
Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic.
Delta Sierra Juliet, fire seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. What type of aircraft is it?
Delta Sierra Juliet, I cannot affirm to 4 bright, seems to be like landing lights.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
The aircraft has just passed over me, at least 1,000 feet above.
Right at King Island. Delta Sierra Juliet, roger, and it is a large aircraft, confirmed?
Unknown. Due to the speed that's travelling, is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity?
Delta Sierra Juliet, no known aircraft in the vicinity.
Melbourne, it's approaching out from due east towards me.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Delta Sierra Juliet, it seems to me that he's playing some sort of game, flying over me 2-3 times at a time. At speeds I could not identify.
The Delta Sierra Juliet, roger, what is your actual level?
The level is 4,500.
The Delta Sierra Juliet, and confirm you cannot identify the aircraft?
Affirmative.
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger, stand by.
Melbourne, Delta Sierra Juliet, it's not an aircraft, it is
Yes, sir. There we go. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne, can you describe the aircraft?
cable play. Delta Sierra Juliet, as it's flying past, it's the long shape. Cannot identify more today, because it's not speed.
CC playing game.
Call me right now, Melbourne.
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger, and how large would the object be?
King Island, he's at 4500, this thing's with Bubby. You haven't got anything on radar down that way, have you?
Nothing at all, no.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne, it seems like it's chasing me. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and sort of metallic light. Sword shiny in the airspace.
You haven't got anything on radar at all, have you? Nothing that I can say with an aircraft, no. Delta Sierra Juliet. Whether we turn down there at about that position, or a bit further north of me. Yeah.
Delta Sierra Juliet. It's just vanished.
Yeah. Delta Sierra Juliet.
Melbourne, would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it a military aircraft?
And Delta Sierra Juliet, confirm the aircraft just vanished.
Right. Say again?
And Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you?
Delta Sierra Juliet on north, south, fighting from the southwest.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Delta Sierra Juliet, the engine is front idling. We've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is stopping.
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. What are your intentions?
My intentions are to go to King Island, Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne.
There you have it, folks. Yeah, truly chilling. Let's get rid of this here. I mean, you hear the descriptions that he's giving as he's listening to it. Green light, long, hovering, circling around him, perhaps mirroring his movements as he's orbiting. Metallic kind of sheen or side to it. It's not an aircraft. So that audio from Valentich, I believe, has been out in the public domain for a while, but the audio from the air traffic controller has not. So this is, as far as I'm aware, in that presentation that the UFO Research Organization for New South Wales put out this full recording. So I'm pleased that it's now out there, and it's again fitting that Frederick Valentich's then 16-year-old girlfriend has released it. Just chilling to listen to, and I would agree with you, Joe. How very freaky for poor Valentich, because he stayed pretty composed, I thought, throughout the whole ordeal. But that noise at the end, I mean, he did say that his engine was starting to rough idle. So I don't know if he ran into some engine problems at the end, and it's still heavily debated what that kind of metallic clanking noise is at the end of his transmission. Is that a problem with the engine? Is it something else related to what he's seeing? But yeah, take of it what you will. I think there are efforts underway to try and clean up that audio, I think, even more, so that you got a cleaner version to listen to. But just a fascinating case. And I don't think, to your point, Joe, no, they never found him or the plane. There were some research efforts, and I believe that in years subsequent to the disappearance of Valentich, there was some wreckage or fuselage that was recovered, but it was never definitively linked to Valentich's Cessna. So there was really no debris found immediately after his disappearance. So sadly, Frederick Valentich lost his life. His body was never recovered. There have been a lot of explanations put forward as to, prosaic explanations. Was he disorientated? Was he flying upside down, which I think is laughable? Was he drunk? Certainly didn't sound like it. Was he extremely fatigued, or was he encountering some engine problems or some unknown weird atmospheric conditions, or was he encountering a UFO, a UAP? And you heard there from air traffic control that they had checked. Is there anything on radar? Nothing on radar. So he's just a truly extraordinary account, and again, make of it what you will. But I think the disappearance of Frederick Valentich remains one of those mysterious, unresolved cold cases of the modern era. And so Zane, if you put your skills to work, if you're able to pull that audio, I'll put the link in the description below for UFOB's recording and subtitles. I think they may have worked on the version, I'm not sure. I'll also include the link to that presentation done by the UFO Research Organization for New South Wales. So I actually haven't had a chance to watch that presentation yet in its entirety. So I'm looking forward to giving it a look-see. You're right, very composed. And he says, it's hovering above me. It's hovering now. It's not an aircraft. So Clark, great to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining. Interesting story of the aircraft being seen the following day by a farmer stuck to a metallic disc. Yeah, there was reports of that. How much weight we can add or credibility we can add to the that claim. There have been folks that have remained highly skeptical, but I guess it's another piece of the puzzle that needs to be considered and factored in. So I know that the series that I was involved in that premiered last year called Close Encounters Down Under, one of the episodes that they did, they covered the Frederick Valentich case, and they actually interviewed the farmer, the gentleman that claimed that he had seen a metallic disc, a UFO, that had what resembled a Cessna, a plane, stuck to it. Such an extraordinary claim and thing that he had commented on. But again, what degree of credibility can you add to that claim? I'm not sure, and I think a few others have endeavored to try and get more information from that individual, but intriguing nonetheless. So it'd be interested to see what you can come up there, Zane, if you can clean some of the audio. That's everything I wanted to cover off on with you folks. We're at 2 hours and 49 minutes, so I'm under the 3 hours. Yes. Really appreciate you all taking some time out of your day to be with me on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. Hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are. If you're in Australia, enjoy the rest of your Friday. If you're abroad, enjoy your Thursday evening, and look forward to seeing you again on a future episode of the Unexplained Rundown. So thanks again, folks, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.